Hello and welcome to the countdown to Nintendo Switch 2. This is week 8 of our countdown, which means there's only 3 weeks left until the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, which is what we've been counting down to. We've been focusing on a different game or series every week. This week it's my birthday on the day this is releasing, so I'm going to be talking about my favourite video game franchise, which is Metroid, and what sort of games we're going to see on the Switch 2, when we might see them, and mainly my kind of hopes and dreams for the series, because I don't know how much this is actually going to come true, but we can only hope. So let's get into it. The most obvious game is, of course, Metroid Prime 4. It's the only one that is actually announced. We know it's coming out this year, or at least it's announced to be coming this year. It could, of course, get delayed, but I don't think it will. Whether it's a Switch 2 game in any meaningful way is the only question about it. It will work on Switch 2s, and seemingly it's going to come after, unless today they announce a release date that's before June, I guess it would have to be. I don't think that's likely at this point. I think they would have said by now if it was going to be coming out before the Switch 2. I think the fact that they announced Xenoblade X Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition when they did, I think that means that's the last Switch game before the Switch 2 comes out. Obviously, there's still going to be games that work on Switch 1 coming out, but they're not going to be announced until this Switch 2 Direct or after. So, is it going to have any kind of enhancement? We'll know once they start talking about how Switch 1 games are going to be handled on Switch 2. I don't think the way they're going to be doing it is having separate SKUs. I think Nintendo likes simplicity, and they don't want to have like 2 Metroid Prime 4s in the store at once. So I think instead it's going to be a patch, an update, an option in the menu that like turns on the Switch 2 enhancements, or maybe it can just tell it's on a Switch 2 and so it just runs better. Obviously, if it's aiming for 60 and it's just not hitting it because the capability isn't there, then that should be fixed on Switch 2, but also Retro are really good. I don't think they've ever had any issues like that in any of their games they've made, so I don't think that's a concern. Hopefully, they do take advantage of the Switch 2, and they're able to increase resolution, frame rate, add ray tracing. Ooh, a ray trace Metroid game would be something to look at, I think. Like just a suit, and obviously you won't see it a lot, but anytime it goes third person, that would just look incredible. I don't think it's going to be PS5 Pro levels of ray tracing, but just like small amounts just to add those extra layers of lighting and bounces and things. I think would really add to the visuals a lot. Improved frame rate would obviously help. I think they're probably aiming for 60 anyway, so maybe they could get away with a 120 FPS mode, or probably not actually 120, but like 60 plus, right? Just going above 60 for anyone with the TV to with the capability to do that. The resolution, from what we've seen of it, it looks great as it is, but any kind of resolution bump is going to be nice for anybody on a TV higher than 1080p, so that would be really good. I think at a minimum we'll get a if it's supposedly using DLSS, so I think at a minimum we'll get an AI enhanced resolution, which hopefully, just makes everything just look a little bit cleaner. And yes, smoothing out any frame rate if there are any issues, but I can't imagine there'll be many. The ray tracing is one that I'm not sure about. I think the Switch 2 will be capable of it to some degree, but whether they're able to implement it in a Switch 1 game that's just getting a boost on Switch 2, we'll see. If they're doing 2 different SKUs, then yeah, I think they could do that. But if they're not, then possibly not. So is it going to happen? Well, it's definitely going to be working on Switch 2. It's just whether they're going to do the enhancements. I think if they're releasing it after the Switch 2 comes out, I think they'll be looking to do it. The fact they haven't shown anything of Metroid Prime 4 yet, unless there is some kind of direct in March that we don't know about yet, I think that means they're kind of saving it to show off at the Switch 2 event, because otherwise I think they would be talking about it by now. Unless it is just really late in the year, of course, but that's just my current guess, so I think it's going to get some level of enhancement. I'm hoping it's the game that they use to say, this is what the Switch 1 can do, this is what the Switch 2 can do, and just to really show off like how much of a power increase the Switch 2 is compared to Switch 1. There's obviously the best looking games on Switch 2 are going to be ones that are built from the ground up for it, but they won't have a Switch 1 version to compare to, so I think that would be a really nice comparison to have. As to what the game actually is, I often see a lot of people suggest it could be fully open world. I really don't want that. I think it flies in the face of what makes a Metroidvania. Obviously, Metroid being one of the titular, eponymous, whatever you want to call it, of the genre name, Metroidvania. So I want it to stick to being a Metroid game, and I think that open world game ruins that. I know Halo Infinite made people think it could work, but I think that just means people don't fully understand what Metroid Prime is and what it should be and what it's best at. Even though Halo Infinite did do some good things, and while playing it, I kind of got some of what they meant by it, but no, just don't do it. Just stick to what makes it good. Speaking of good, I wonder how good it is going to be. I think obviously ceiling is Metroid Prime 1. I think there's no way it's better than that. Metroid Prime 3 I think is the floor, hopefully. Not that Metroid Prime 3 is awful, it's just clearly the worst of the trilogy. I think being made on Wii kind of hampered it a little bit with how they did it, and then splitting it between the different planets kind of complicated, well, not so much complicated things, simplified things. Complicated the Metroidvania aspect of backtracking and things like that. So hopefully if it's better than Metroid Prime 3, I'll be happy, because that means it'll be a very good game. Metroid Prime 3 is a very good game. It's just when you're comparing it to Metroid Prime 1 being one of the best games ever made, it's a disappointment. A minor disappointment, but a disappointment. Metroid Prime 2 I think is nearly as good as Metroid Prime 1, so yeah, if it reaches those levels, then I think it's going to be the highest rated game of the year, and yeah, one of the games of all time. So that'd be very exciting if they're able to pull that off. I am looking forward to what kind of powers we're going to be getting. Obviously, Metroid is all about getting these powers and these upgrades. I think we can expect, grapple beam, power beam enhancements, suit enhancements. I can't wait to see what new suit they add. I think they've added new suits in every game, so can't wait to see that. One thing I would like to see them be able to pull off is obviously one of the most well-known Metroid power-ups in 2D Metroid is the speed booster, which means you can run, but then using that to Shine Spark, where you build up the power, you hold onto it, and then do a leap that might boost you really fast and breaks special walls, and it's used for a lot of speedrunning tactics and just opening up new areas and hiding special secrets behind it. I think being able to do that in 3D would be really cool. It might be very difficult to pull off with how fast it is, and obviously being in first person, it's going to be really difficult to pull off, but I think if they manage it, it'd be really exciting. Along those same lines, I would love to see if they could pull off a much more improved mobility kind of movement system like Metroid Dread has, where it just moving around in Metroid Dread just feels so nice and smooth and responsive. Obviously, the fact that it's first person means they can't just one-for-one do Metroid Dread, but I think giving Samus that mobility could be really cool. But given it's a Prime game, given where it's set in the Metroid timeline, kinda doesn't really make sense. But I don't know that they will. I think that one thing they could do is give her the speed booster, which would act as a sprint in a normal FPS. I think maybe they will do that, but I would like to just see. She always feels like a tank, which is fun, and I really like that aspect and how that feels. But I also really love the Metroid Dread style, so I kind of love to see them try a first-person take on the Metroid Dread kind of agile speed and combat and movement. And along those lines, I'm very interested to see what they could ever do with the idea of Zero Suit Samus, having her come out of the power armor, or not use it because it's much. I never really understood how the suit works. Not using the power suit, or maybe she goes through some field that it doesn't work there, or it gets teleported somewhere where it can't be summoned, or however it works. And having to, at the end of Metroid Zero Mission, where she has to go on that kind of stealth mission. I don't know that stealth would be quite the way to go. but that could be interesting if they did want to do that. But if not, I think just having her powered down, having enemies that she can usually just kill really quickly, suddenly being this big threat. I guess it would have to be a bit actiony, and I would assume it wouldn't be in first person, but maybe they could still do it in first person with her, like, she's got a pistol, and then I think Smash Brothers gave her the whip. I don't think she's had that in anything else. Yeah, just being able to use those to kind of recontextualize some of the enemies into much stronger things that she really has to deal with or avoid. Maybe that could be fun. Maybe to get certain items, she has to take the armor off to fit somewhere like she can't usually get. But the Morph Core, we should be able to get that. They can find a way, I'm sure, if they want to, and I wouldn't be upset if they don't, but I just think it's a cool new thing they could add if they're looking for a way to change up the formula from Metroid 1, 2, and 3. Another change they could get into is one I talked about, I believe, last week, for Mario, but voice acting. We have had voice acting in Metroid 3, Metroid 2 had some, and of course most recently Metroid Dread. A silly thing with Metroid Dread is when Samus actually spoke, I thought it was Ravenbeak speaking to her through the radio, like saying he was listening in. I was like, oh, wow, Ravenbeak's a woman, I didn't know that, and that's really strange, and why did they say that thing? And then I kept playing the game, and about an hour later I was like, oh shit, that was Samus. And I finally realised what had happened. And now I think that's one of the coolest moments in the game. She just speaks Chozo, and yeah. I would love if they did have her speak in the game. It was just like Dread, just very minimum. I think Dread, she just says that one line and then screams at the end. I wouldn't mind her having like a couple more lines, and I think it would be cool to have her speak Chozo still. That would only make sense if there are Chozo, so that might not be possible, but maybe the first time I have her speak Chozo, like to herself or to a computer, or maybe there is a Chozo somewhere, and then just have like one or two lines where she speaks English to presumably Silence, or somebody else. I think that could be really, really cool. Don't know who would do it. I know Jennifer Hale voiced her in Other M, I believe, and then I think it was a different voice actress. Did they bring her back? I think it was a different voice actress for Dread. But whoever they bring back, yeah, both of them have done really well. I think it'd be really, really cool. So that's Metroid 4. I think there is a good chance, and I'm not going to assume, but I'm just going to hope, we will get Metroid 5 on Switch 2 as well. Obviously, this is assuming Metroid 4 doesn't completely bomb, but it seems like they want to build it up to be this big thing, with them ending the last Direct we had. With it, even though they had a new Mario game and they had a new Zelda, they still chose to end with Metroid. That could just be because they know the kind of people watching Directs are the kind of people that are going to be into Metroid, but it could also mean that they have faith, or that they're planning to spend a lot of money on marketing, or maybe that Switch 2 is going to launch with Metroid Prime 4, or yeah, we'll see. I think at worst it should have quite a big dedication in the Switch 2 Direct, if it does have these enhancements and isn't just like, you can also play it on Switch 2. Yeah, assuming all that, and that it does sell decently, I think decently for me would be minimum 3 million, which I believe is the current best. Like Dread is around 3 million somewhere, 3 million and something. So if it can reach that, I think that's fine. I'd love to see it hit 5. If I can dream, it would be hitting 10, 15, 20, because I really think the series deserves it. It's one of the best series, like just every game, mainline game, is really, really good in its own way, and yeah, it's just very special, so I'd love to see it hit that. Yeah, I think so long as it sells that kind of 3 to 5 million, I think Metroid 5 is very possible. Timeline-wise, so it's what? So Metroid 4 was announced in 2017, and then it was rebooted in 2019. Now expecting it in 2025. So that's 6 years of development. Well, more than 6 years. So that would pop us at what, 2031, which at that point we might even be talking about Switch 3 or whatever that comes after. But I feel like now that they've made Metroid Prime 5, I think they can take the engine, just make a sequel, Metroid Prime 2 style sequel of just same engine, same everything, even reuse assets, and just get it out sooner. My hope would be they could get it out, well, I would hope they could get it out in a year, if I have it my way. Obviously that's not likely. So realistically, I think 4 years could happen, maybe 3 at a push. I mean, these aren't particularly long games, and if it's all Retro are working on, I think they could get it out in 3 if it is this kind of asset reuse, engine reuse, everything. I think that would be Switch 2 exclusive at that point, so then the tech team can spend time on just making it look that much better. I think that'd be really cool. And then, dreaming even further, Metroid Prime 6. If they can make that 3 to 4 years, and then they can do that again with Metroid Prime 6, then we could get the whole trilogy come out on Switch 2. That would be really exciting. I don't think that's super likely. I think, with delays and with how the games industry works, I think at least one of those would get delays, even if they all happen. I think there's a good chance 6 would be on the following console. But it's my birthday, I'm dreaming. So let's say Metroid Prime 4 to 6 are coming out on Switch 2. Guaranteed. Not actually guaranteed. Guaranteed. So the question then, if that is going to happen, I think they'd probably already be planning it to some degree. So I'd be curious as to what the trilogy is actually going to be about. Something I didn't talk about much before is this beyond aspect and the kind of wormhole, black hole kind of iconography that's sort of being used for it. It does imply that they're going to be doing something with that. So as to what that actually is, we'll have to wait and see. But I think whatever that is would be what the trilogy is about. Obviously, then you've also got Psylocke and the Metroids, and yeah, I think maybe that could be part of it, or maybe the cause of whatever this whole stuff is, or maybe vice versa. Yeah, I think that would kind of tie the whole trilogy together. So I'm not certain about Metroid Prime 5 and 6, although I do really hope it. But one thing I am pretty certain on is Metroid 6. Obviously, Metroid Dread being Metroid 5, they just don't actually number them anymore, although they do in the trailers, which is cool. So yeah, I think Metroid 6 is probably in active development right now. I think it's probably pretty close. I mean, it's been a few years already. And much like I said about Metroid Prime 5 and 6, I think they could have a pretty quick turnaround. Relatively, like 3 to 4 years. So we could be looking at that in the next couple of years. I would love it if it was next year, have Prime 4 this year to kick off Switch 2, and then next year have Metroid 6. That'd be awesome. I assume it'd be Microsteam working on it again. I think they did a good job with Samus Returns. I think they did an amazing job with Dread. I would love to see them come back. The biggest complaint I have with Dread is I'm going to call it linearity, but it does have that open world aspect of a Metroidvania and a Metroid game. But they did such a good job at guiding you everywhere. You kind of never. Game Maker's Toolkit had a really good video on it, saying like you never really get lost. I think I did have one moment on my first playthrough where I was kind of like, oh, I'm not quite sure where I need to go, which I actually love that feeling. So that was good, but yeah, I would love I think they just kind of stopped you from backtracking a little too much. Which makes sense because you shouldn't really be backtracking at that point, but I think just not forcing you to just keep going forward, I think that kind of ruined the Metroidvania aspect a bit. But they did such a good job of everything else I didn't really mind. I think if Metroid 6 was the same again, I think I would start to get a bit annoyed by it, so I'd hope they would take this a step back from that kind of forcing you forward approach all the way and open up the world a bit more, make it a bit more complicated. It'd be very interesting to see what they do now with Samus, spoilers for Metroid Dread, with Samus now being a Metroid, or however you want to word that, turning into a Metroid, having this Metroid gene. I kind of would love, obviously at the end of the game we see her in that Dread suit. No, that's not what they call it. Metroid suit, that's what they call it. And I would love for them to use that as you know, in like a God of War game, you'll build up a rage meter and then you'll press it and then you'll turn into, or you'll just get more powerful and do like extra damage on your attack. I would love to have like a kind of rage meter for Samus, where she just goes full Metroid and just can wipe out anything basically. Might be a bit too strong because of the like energy sucking power. But maybe there could be some kind of counterplay with it of, you know, you're doing extra damage, but maybe it's draining your life force to do so. But then when you kill somebody, maybe you can take their life force back. So it's, you know, like almost like a blood magic kind of thing of you're trading your health to do more damage, but then you can also take the health back. I think that could be a really cool mechanic, and I'd love to see them try something like that. So yeah, Metroid 6 I think is very likely, probably within the next 2 to 3 years we'll see that, and I cannot wait to see that one, because I love. So as for anything else, Metroid on Switch 2, I think we're probably going to get at least one remake. At minimum, I think it's Samus Returns port, so Samus Returns being the 3DS remake of 2. I think a HD version of that on Switch just makes sense. I'm actually a little surprised it hasn't already happened. I thought we might get it last year, like kind of in preparation for Metroid Prime 4 this year, not that there. I always get confused. Prime is either just before 2 or just after. Just before, because the baby, yeah. So yeah, that wouldn't make sense. But just, you know, just to keep Metroid in the public eye kind of thing, just having a new game every year would be really nice. Yeah, maybe we'll get Metroid Prime 4 this year, Samus Returns port next year, and then Metroid 6 the year after. That makes a lot of sense to me. As for another kind of remake, I think it's fairly likely that we'll get a Super Fusion remake. Obviously they've remade 1 and 2 already, so 3 and 4 just make sense. The only reason I think they wouldn't do 3 is because it's a bit of a risky one with how much people love it, and people say it doesn't need a remake. And it doesn't need a remake, but a remake also wouldn't take away anything from the original, so I think it would be a great idea. The main thing I'd like to see improved from the original is the controls. I do worry about like the art style kind of getting lost, because I assume it'd be like in the Dread engine, or whatever they call that engine. And I think that could kind of make the game feel a bit more like clinical and higher produced, within the original has that kind of more grungy feel to it. I think the best way to do a remake would be to kind of do like a 2D HD, I think Square Enix call it, like that kind of style. Graphics for a Super Metroid remake would be amazing. I don't know how likely that is, but maybe they wouldn't do like a 3D thing. Maybe they would stick to, maybe not pixel art, but maybe like 2D hand, or maybe like Ori style. That could be special. But yeah, I think the graphics are the biggest worry when it comes to a remake, because I assume they wouldn't make it more Dread-like with the speed, because I think that kind of tanky feel does really fit Super Metroid as a game. So I think that's really important to keep that in a potential remake. This might sound controversial. I kind of want a Federation Force spiritual successor. I'd like them to do it as like full-on FPS. I feel like Federation Force was kind of like a half measure between a Metroid Prime game and a full-on FPS where it was more action-focused, but you still have the kind of awkward controls of the Metroid Prime, which doesn't lend itself to an FPS where you like have to lock on to everything. I don't think you had to lock on in Federation Force, but it felt like you did because it was just a bit awkward to do it any other way. So a proper like Doom-style FPS but in the Metroid world would be awesome. If they were to do that, as much as I love Samus and want to see her and everything, I think a new character would be the right fit for that. Maybe like one of the bounty hunters we've seen before, maybe a new bounty hunter, maybe something brand new to like expand the universe even more. Yeah, something like that I think would be really good. And then either in that game or as a separate game, I think a multiplayer arena-based shooter or hero-based shooter would be interesting. When you say that these days, you know, you imagine teams spending years and years making it and then nobody playing it and getting laid off. But with it being Nintendo, I think they might be able to manage it. I prefer them to keep it smaller scale, like maybe 4v4 modes, like much fewer characters, and not necessarily live service, just release it, it does what it does, and then you move on. You don't spend years making years worth of content for after launch. You need to have to shut down the service 3 months in. I think you just release it, make sure it's got P2P play on it, so that even if they have to take the servers down, it's still playable after the fact. And then I think it could do decently as a mode in this potential like FPS campaign. I think that'd make a bit more sense, and maybe the campaign is actually more of a spin-off to a multiplayer mode than the other way around. But either way, I think that could be really fun. I loved the idea of Other M. I don't think Other M was a great game. I also don't think it's as bad as everyone says it is. I think it's an okay game with a lot of issues. I would love to see them try that again, because I feel like it was a bit more kind of action focused. So obviously you had the like 3D movement, but then you can go into first person. I'd kind of like them to get rid of the first person and just have you running around like a 3D environment, almost, not quite, but like almost Devil May Cry-esque. Because the way like Samus moved in that game was really cool, and like they've never really done that in any other game, and I really enjoyed that part. Getting somebody like a Platinum, but now maybe Clovers, or getting some team like that to work on it, I think that'd be really cool. And yeah, obviously don't do the stupid story stuff that they did in Other M. But other than that, I think it's an idea worth exploring again. And then there's probably going to be other spin-offs. Well, I say probably. There might be other spin-offs if Metroid does kind of get this, start becoming a bit more successful, starting with Prime 4, which I'm really hoping it does. Then yeah, I think we can see some other spin-offs coming potentially as well. Especially if they still want to make Switch 1 games, like Switch 1 exclusives, or like made for Switch 1 games that also obviously come on Switch 2. I think it could be a good idea to just have like a basic kind of spin-off for Metroid on Switch 1. Maybe that's even one of the remake Metroid. But yeah, I think we'll get plenty of stuff down the line, even if it is just Metroid Prime and Metroid Mainline. And I think the ports and remakes are really likely too. That's going to do it for this week. Thank you for listening to me ramble about Metroid for nearly 30 minutes. That was a birthday treat for myself. Next week, I'm going to be talking about all the third-party titles we may see come to Switch 2, both like ports of old games and potential new games, as well as maybe some exclusives. So we'll talk about that next week, when we'll only be 2 weeks away from Direct, which is crazy. So thank you very much for watching this time, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.